My name is Lily Carter. I'm 26 years old. And 3 months ago, during the worst argument I've ever had with my parents, my mother said something that completely changed my life. "You're not even our real child." The room went silent after that. For a second, I honestly thought she was just saying it to hurt me. People say cruel things during arguments all the time. But the way my dad suddenly looked down at the table, the way my mom refused to look at me, it didn't feel like a random insult. It felt like a secret that had just slipped out. I tried to laugh it off. I even told myself she didn't mean it. But once that thought enters your mind, it doesn't leave. Because suddenly, every strange moment from your childhood starts replaying in your head. Every time you felt different. Every time your parents treated your siblings better. Every awkward silence when relatives talked about the past. So a week later, I did something I never thought I would do. I ordered a DNA test. I thought the results would prove my mom wrong. I thought it would finally shut down that horrible doubt in my head. But when the results came back, they revealed something about my family that no one was ready for. When I look back at my childhood now, I realize the signs were always there. At the time, I couldn't explain it. I just had this quiet feeling that I didn't quite belong. I was the middle child in our family. My older brother, Mark, was the one my parents bragged about to everyone. Straight A's, varsity sports, scholarships. Every achievement of his was celebrated like a national holiday in our house. My younger sister, Emily, was the baby. She was the one everyone protected. If she made a mistake, it was always she's still learning or she's just sensitive. But me? I always felt like I was somewhere in between and somehow outside of everything. My birthdays were smaller. My achievements were acknowledged, but never really celebrated. If I brought home good grades, my parents would say, "That's nice." But when my brother did the same thing, they would call relatives and tell everyone how proud they were. I tried not to notice it. Kids don't want to believe their parents love them less. So I told myself I was imagining things. But there were moments that stuck with me. Like when relatives would stare at me for a little too long during family gatherings. Or when someone would casually say, "You don't really look like anyone else in the family." Whenever that happened, my mom would quickly change the subject. At the time, I thought it was just awkward conversation. Now I realize it was something else. Even family photos always felt strange. When we stood together, my brother and sister looked so much like my parents it was almost obvious. Same eyes, same smile, same expressions. But I looked different. Different hair color, different facial features. Even my height didn't match anyone else in the family. Once, when I was about 12, I actually asked my mom about it. I remember laughing when I said it. "Are you sure I'm not adopted?" I thought it was a harmless joke. But for a split second, my mom froze. She quickly laughed and said, "Of course you're not." Then she walked out of the room. At the time, I didn't think much about it. But now, after everything that happened, that moment feels very different in my memory. The argument that changed everything started with something so small, it almost feels ridiculous now. It was a normal Tuesday evening. I was scrolling through Instagram after work when I saw a photo my sister had posted. It was a picture of 3 plane tickets laid out on a kitchen counter with the caption, "Florida family trip. Can't wait." At first, I smiled. I thought maybe it was a surprise vacation my parents had planned for all of us. But when I looked closer, I noticed something. There were only 3 tickets. My mom, my brother, my sister. My name wasn't there. I stared at the photo for a long time, hoping I was misunderstanding something. Maybe they had booked my ticket separately. Maybe I had missed a message. But deep down, I already knew. Still, I decided to call my mom. She answered cheerfully at first, like nothing was wrong. "Hey honey, what's up?" I tried to keep my voice calm. "I just saw Emily's post. You guys are going to Florida." "Oh, yeah," she said casually. "Just a quick little trip." I waited for her to mention my ticket. She didn't. "So, why didn't you tell me?" I asked. There was a pause. "Oh, sweetie, we just assumed you'd be busy with work." That answer hit me harder than I expected, because she hadn't even asked. Years of quiet frustration suddenly came pouring out. "Why do you always treat me differently?" I said, my voice shaking now. "Why am I always the one left out?" The conversation escalated quickly. My mom became defensive. My dad joined the call in the background. Voices got louder. And then, suddenly, my mom snapped. "Well, maybe it's because you're not even our real child." The moment those words left her mouth, everything went silent. My heart felt like it stopped. I waited for her to laugh, to say she didn't mean it, but she didn't. And in that silence, I realized something was very, very wrong. After that phone call, I couldn't sleep. My mom's words kept repeating in my head over and over again. "You're not even our real child." At first, I tried to convince myself she had only said it because she was angry. People say terrible things during arguments, words they don't actually mean. But something about the way she said it didn't feel like a random insult. It felt like the truth had slipped out by accident. For the next few days, I tried to ignore it. I focused on work, watched TV, even went out with friends. But no matter what I did, that sentence kept echoing in my mind. Eventually, curiosity turned into doubt. And doubt slowly turned into fear. One evening, I pulled out the old family photo albums from my closet. I started flipping through them slowly. Birthday parties, school photos, Christmas mornings. At first, everything looked normal. But the longer I stared at the pictures, the more something started to bother me. My brother and sister looked so much like my parents. Same eyes, same smile, same facial structure. Even their gestures looked similar. But me? I looked like I belonged to a completely different family. Different hair color, different bone structure, different everything. I tried to laugh it off at first. Genetics can be weird, right? But deep down, a cold feeling started growing in my chest. Later that night, I met my best friend Sarah for coffee. I told her everything. The argument, my mom's words, the photos. She listened quietly the entire time. Then she leaned forward and said something simple. "Lily, why don't you just take a DNA test?" The idea made my stomach twist. Because once you open that door, you can't close it again. But at that moment, I realized something. The doubt was already there. And the only way to make it stop was to find the truth. A few days after talking to Sarah, I finally did it. I ordered the DNA test. At first, it felt like such a small decision. Just a few clicks on a website, a payment confirmation, and an email saying the kit would arrive in 3 to 5 days. But the moment I placed the order, my stomach dropped. Because suddenly it felt real. For the next few days, I kept asking myself the same question over and over again. What if my mom was telling the truth? Part of me hoped the test would prove everything wrong. That it would come back showing both of my parents were exactly who I believed they were. That this whole thing had just been a cruel thing said during an argument. But another part of me was afraid it wouldn't. 3 days later, a small white box arrived at my apartment. It looked so simple. Just a plain package sitting on my kitchen table. But somehow it felt heavier than it should have. Because inside that little box was the answer to a question that could completely change my life. I stared at it for almost an hour before opening it. Finally, I took a deep breath and lifted the lid. The instructions were simple. All I had to do was take a cotton swab, rub it along the inside of my cheek, place it into the container, seal it, and mail it back. 5 minutes of work. That's all it took to send my DNA off to a laboratory. But while I was holding that swab, my hands were shaking. Because once I sent that sample away, there would be no turning back. The truth was already on its way. After sealing the package, I drove to the nearest mailbox and dropped it in. The moment it disappeared through the slot, I felt a strange mix of relief and fear. Now all I could do was wait. The website said results usually took 2 to 3 weeks. And those 3 weeks felt longer than anything I had ever experienced. Every day, I checked my email. Every notification made my heart jump. Sometimes I even caught myself hoping the results would never come. Because as long as I didn't know the truth, my life could still pretend to be normal. 3 weeks passed slower than I ever thought possible. Every single morning, the first thing I did was check my email. Every notification made my heart jump. Sometimes it was just a promotion from a store or a message from work, and every time I felt this strange mix of relief and disappointment. Because part of me was still hoping the results would come quickly. And another part of me was terrified they actually would. Then one Thursday afternoon, while I was sitting at my desk at work, my phone vibrated. I almost ignored it. But when I glanced at the screen, my heart nearly stopped. The subject line said, "Your DNA results are ready." For a moment, I just stared at the notification. My hands started to shake. I suddenly realized I wasn't ready to see it. But at the same time, I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. So I opened the email. There was a link to the website where my results were waiting. I clicked it. The page took a few seconds to load, but those few seconds felt like forever. When the results finally appeared on the screen, my stomach dropped. Because the answer wasn't simple. The report clearly showed one thing immediately. My mother was biologically related to me. That part was confirmed. But when I looked at the section labeled paternal match, there was nothing. No connection. No shared DNA. Which meant only one thing. The man I had called Dad my entire life was not my biological father. I stared at the screen, hoping I had misunderstood something. Maybe I was reading it wrong. Maybe the website had made a mistake. But the more I looked at it, the clearer the truth became. My mom was my real mother. But my father wasn't. And suddenly, dozens of questions started racing through my mind. Who was my real father? Did my dad know? Had my entire family been hiding this secret from me my whole life? At that moment, I realized something terrifying. The argument with my mom hadn't just revealed a cruel insult. It had revealed the beginning of a truth that my family had been hiding for 26 years. I didn't sleep that night. The DNA report stayed open on my laptop for hours while I sat there staring at the screen. Every time I read the words again, the truth felt heavier. My mom was my biological mother, but my dad wasn't. By morning, I knew I couldn't keep this to myself. I needed answers. So that afternoon, I drove straight to my parents' house. The same house where I had grown up. The same house where every childhood memory lived. When I knocked on the door, my mom opened it. She looked surprised to see me. "Lily, what are you doing here?" I didn't waste time with small talk. I walked inside, pulled my phone out, and held the screen in front of her. "It's my DNA test," I said. My voice was shaking, but I forced myself to stay calm. For a moment, she didn't react. Then she read the results. And I saw something in her eyes I had never seen before. Fear. My dad walked into the living room behind her. "What's going on?" I turned to him slowly. "The DNA test says you're not my father." The room went completely silent. For a few seconds, nobody said anything. Then my mom sat down on the couch like the air had suddenly left the room. My dad looked confused at first, but then something in his expression changed. Like he already knew what was coming. Finally, my mom whispered something I never expected to hear. "I never wanted you to find out like this." My heart started pounding. "Find out what?" She took a deep breath. And then she told the truth. 26 years ago, before she married my dad, she had a short relationship with someone else. And when she discovered she was pregnant, everything became complicated. My dad knew. He had always known. But they made a decision together. They would raise me as his child and never tell me the truth. For a long time, I didn't know how to feel. Part of me was angry that the truth had been hidden from me for my entire life. But another part of me realized something important. The man who raised me, the man who taught me how to ride a bike, helped me with homework, and stayed up when I was sick, was still my dad. DNA didn't change that. But what did change was the silence. For the first time in 26 years, the truth was finally out. And sometimes, the truth doesn't destroy a family. Sometimes, it finally sets it free.